Chapter 1. Arriving in London. Lucas had always dreamed of visiting London. The idea of walking the streets of a city so full of history, culture, and opportunity excited him. But now that he was actually here, standing outside Heathrow Airport, the reality felt a little overwhelming. The noise, the crowds, the fast pace, it was all so different from his quiet hometown. And then there was the language. He had studied English in school for years, but learning in a classroom and using it in real life were two very different things. As he dragged a suitcase onto the train that would take him into central London, Lucas couldn't help but feel nervous. Would people understand him when he spoke? Would he understand them? He knew that coming to London was the best way to immerse himself in English, but now, facing it head-on, the challenge seemed bigger than he had imagined. The first test came sooner than he expected. After checking into his small apartment, Lucas went out to explore the neighborhood. It was a cool afternoon, and he decided to stop at a small cafe to grab something warm to drink. Approaching the counter, he rehearsed the words in his head. "Can I have a cup of tea, please?" It was a simple sentence, but his heart pounded in his chest as if he were about to give a speech in front of hundreds of people. When it was his turn to order, he smiled nervously at the young waiter behind the counter. "Can I have a cup of tea, please?" he said slowly, focusing on each word. The waiter nodded, smiled back, and repeated his order without hesitation. "Sure. 1 cup of tea coming right up." Lucas breathed a sigh of relief. He had done it. His first real conversation in English, and it had gone smoothly. As he sat by the window, sipping his tea, he felt a little more confident. Maybe this wasn't going to be so bad after all. The next day, Lucas had his first English class at the language school he had signed up for. The school was in the heart of London, and as he entered the building, he saw students from all over the world. Some were chatting in different languages, others were sitting quietly, looking just as nervous as he felt. The teacher, Emily, greeted everyone with a warm smile. She was a native English speaker, but she spoke clearly and slowly so that everyone could follow along. "Welcome, everyone," she began. "You've all come here to improve your English, and that's what we're going to do together. Remember, learning a language is like learning any new skill. It takes time, practice, and patience. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn." Lucas felt a wave of reassurance wash over him. He wasn't alone in this. Everyone here was in the same boat, trying to improve their English and navigate life in a new city. The first class was focused on introductions. Each student had to stand up, say their name, where they were from, and why they wanted to learn English. When it was his turn, Lucas felt his hands start to sweat again. "Hello," he said, standing up. "My name is Lucas. I am from Brazil, and I want to learn English for my job and for life." He sat down quickly, his heart racing once again. But as the class went on, he found himself relaxing. The students were friendly, and Emily made the lessons fun and interactive. By the end of the day, he had learned a few new phrases and even felt more comfortable speaking up in front of others. After class, Lucas decided to walk around the city. He passed famous landmarks like Big Ben and the River Thames, feeling a mix of awe and excitement. As he strolled through the busy streets, he overheard conversations in English everywhere, on buses, in shops, on the sidewalk. At first, it was hard to catch everything, but as he listened closely, he started picking up on common phrases and words. He realized that he was already learning just by being surrounded by the language. Back at his apartment that evening, Lucas reflected on his day. He had faced his first real challenge, ordering tea in English, and had survived. He had also completed his first English class and made some new friends. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed, but there were also moments when he felt proud of himself. He knew that learning English wasn't going to be easy, but today had shown him that it was possible. And that was enough to keep him going. As he prepared for bed, Lucas made a promise to himself. Every day, he would try to speak English, even if it was just a few words. He would push through the moments of doubt and embarrassment because, in the end, it would all be worth it. London was his classroom now, and the adventure was just beginning. Chapter 2. First Challenges and New Friends. The sun was just rising over London as Lucas hurried down the street toward his language school. The chill in the air made him pull his jacket tighter, but his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the upcoming lesson. He had made a good start yesterday, but today would be tougher. He could feel it. As he walked, Lucas decided to stop by the same cafe from yesterday. Ordering tea had given him a small victory, and he wanted to start the day with the same confidence boost. When he entered, the same waiter was there, busy with a few customers, but this time Lucas wasn't nervous. "Good morning," Lucas greeted the waiter with a smile, already feeling more at ease. "Can I have a cup of tea again, please?" The waiter, who recognized him from the day before, gave him a friendly smile. "Of course." One cup of tea coming right up. As he waited for his drink, Lucas thought about how much just one day had helped him. He realized that immersing himself in English every day was key to improving, but it also meant facing a lot of small challenges that felt big at the moment. He wasn't just learning English, he was living it. When he arrived at school, Lucas was greeted by Emily, the teacher, who handed out a worksheet to the class. Today's lesson was about asking for directions, an essential skill in a city like London. As the lesson began, Emily wrote out some common phrases on the board. "How do I get to?" "Can you show me the way to?" "Is this the right way to?" Lucas practiced with his classmates, but every time he had to say a sentence out loud, his words came out stiff, like he was still afraid of saying the wrong thing. Emily noticed and gave him a reassuring smile. "Lucas, don't worry.
Just take your time.
The more you practice, the easier it will become." He nodded, appreciating her encouragement. After class, Emily paired the students up to practice conversations with each other. Lucas was paired with a girl named Aya, who was from Japan. Aya smiled warmly at him, and though she seemed a little shy, her English was very good. "Hi, Lucas," she said softly. "Where are you from?" "I'm from Brazil," Lucas answered, feeling more comfortable. "And you?" "Japan," Aya replied. "I came here to study English for my job." The two of them chatted for a while, stumbling through sentences, but laughing at their mistakes. Aya explained that she had been in London for a month and knew the struggles of adjusting to life in a new country, especially when English wasn't your first language. "You know," Aya said, "when I first came here, I didn't understand anything. Even when people said simple things like, 'How are you?' I would just smile and nod. It was so hard at first." Lucas could relate. "Yes, it's the same for me. I know some English, but when I have to speak quickly, I freeze." Aya nodded understandingly. "But it gets better.
You'll see.
Little by little, you start to understand more, and speaking becomes easier." Their conversation helped Lucas realize something important. He wasn't alone in this struggle. There were many people, just like Aya and himself, who had come to London to improve their English, and everyone was facing similar challenges. That made the journey feel a little less intimidating. After class, Lucas and Aya decided to explore the city together. Aya had already been to some of the famous places, so she offered to show Lucas around. As they walked through the streets of central London, Lucas tried to use his English more, asking questions about the city and commenting on what he saw. They visited Trafalgar Square, where tourists crowded around statues and fountains. Lucas asked Aya about the famous places she had already seen, and Aya told him about her visits to the British Museum and Covent Garden. As they walked, Lucas realized that this was what learning English was really about, not just practicing grammar in a classroom but using it in real life, in conversations, to connect with people from all over the world. After a long day of exploring, Lucas felt tired but happy. His confidence was growing, and he was beginning to enjoy using English, even if it wasn't perfect yet. The more he spoke, the more natural it felt. That evening, back at his apartment, Lucas thought about the day. He had faced his fear of speaking with new people, and he had made a friend in Aya. More importantly, he had learned that everyone has to start somewhere and that every conversation, no matter how small, was a step toward fluency. He smiled to himself as he prepared for bed, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The city outside was still buzzing with life, but inside, Lucas felt calm. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was ready for them. He had learned that learning a language was not just about memorizing words or rules, it was about being brave enough to speak, to make mistakes, and to keep going. And as he drifted off to sleep, Lucas made a new promise to himself. Every day, he would step a little further out of his comfort zone, one conversation at a time. Chapter 3: Getting Lost and Finding Confidence. Lucas's third day in London started with high spirits. He felt encouraged by his conversation with Aya the day before and was eager to try out his newly learned phrases. Today's lesson focused on ordering food and shopping, two things Lucas knew he'd need to feel truly at home. But he wanted to challenge himself, so after class, he decided to explore a different part of the city alone. After class, he said goodbye to Aya and set off. He remembered Emily's lesson on asking for directions and figured it was time to put it into action. He didn't have a map and chose instead to rely on his English skills if he got lost. Lucas wandered through narrow streets and colorful neighborhoods, taking in the blend of modern buildings and old, historic architecture. After walking for a while, he realized he had no idea where he was. A familiar feeling of nervousness crept in, but Lucas quickly pushed it aside. This was his chance to practice. He spotted an elderly man sitting on a bench feeding pigeons. Taking a deep breath, he approached. "Excuse me, sir," Lucas began, his voice wavering just a bit. "Could you tell me, how to get to the nearest train station?" The man looked up with a friendly smile. The train station? You'll want to go left down this street, take the second right, and then just keep going until you see it." Lucas listened carefully, repeating the directions in his head. "Thank you," he said, trying not to let his relief show too much. As he walked away, Lucas felt proud of himself. It was a small moment, but it reminded him that he was capable. He kept walking and soon found the station just as the man had described. Still feeling confident, Lucas decided to test his skills further by ordering lunch at a nearby cafe. The busy crowd and unfamiliar menu made him nervous, but he was determined. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the counter and scanned the menu, recognizing a few items. "I'll have a ham and cheese sandwich, please," he said, hoping he'd pronounced everything correctly. The cashier, a young woman, nodded. "Anything to drink with that?" "Just water. Thank you." "Coming right up," she said with a smile. Lucas felt another small victory. He paid, took his food, and found a seat by the window. Each little interaction felt like progress, giving him more confidence to keep going. As he sat there eating, he noticed a small group of young people at a nearby table. They seemed to be students like him, chatting in English and laughing. Lucas decided to listen in, hoping to pick up a few new phrases. Their conversation was quick, full of casual slang, and he only caught bits and pieces, but it was enough to inspire him. He realized that becoming fluent wouldn't just mean knowing vocabulary, it would mean understanding the culture, expressions, and ways people interacted. After finishing his lunch, Lucas felt ready for another challenge. He decided to visit a nearby bookstore. Walking through the shelves, he picked up a few beginner books in English, thinking they'd be useful for extra practice. While browsing, he noticed an English phrasebook and decided to buy it too. On his way back, Lucas practiced some phrases from the book under his breath. He repeated phrases he thought would be useful, imagining scenarios where he'd need them. His determination was building, and he felt ready for whatever the next day would bring. When Lucas returned to his apartment, he was tired but pleased with his day. He'd successfully navigated new parts of the city, ordered food, and practiced conversations. As he prepared for bed, he thought about how each small success added to his confidence. He was starting to see that learning a language wasn't just about speaking, it was about feeling brave enough to face the unknown, one day at a time. The city outside buzzed quietly, and Lucas smiled as he drifted off to sleep, knowing that with each new day, he was getting closer to mastering English and feeling at home in his new world. Chapter 4: A New Friend and a Different Perspective. The next morning, Lucas felt ready for more challenges. His English classes were picking up pace, and he was starting to understand his teacher, Emily, a bit better. Her clear instructions and patient corrections had given him the courage to try new phrases, and he was eager to put them to use. Today, they were learning about describing feelings and experiences, a lesson Lucas felt would be invaluable. After class, as he gathered his things, Aya approached him with a wide smile. "Lucas, are you free this afternoon? Some classmates and I are going to the National Gallery. It's a chance to practice English in a different way." Lucas hesitated. He was still adjusting to social interactions, and navigating a gallery seemed daunting. But the thought of exploring London with others who were also learning English was comforting, so he agreed. The gallery was breathtaking. Majestic paintings from centuries ago adorned the walls, each one telling a different story. As they walked through the exhibits, Aya introduced him to Sarah and Max, two other students from the class. They were friendly and relaxed, each eager to share their stories about living in London. After admiring a piece by Turner, the group gathered near a bench. They began discussing their favorite paintings, sharing why certain pieces resonated with them. When it was his turn, Lucas pointed to a painting of a quiet village surrounded by hills. It reminds me of home, he said slowly, feeling a bit vulnerable sharing such a personal thought. Sarah nodded, smiling warmly. Art has a way of bringing us closer to where we come from, she said. I feel the same about the cityscapes here. They remind me of my town back in Italy. Hearing her response made Lucas feel more connected to his new friends. They were all from different parts of the world, yet they shared the same struggles and moments of homesickness. For the first time since arriving, he felt truly understood. After they finished at the gallery, the group went to a nearby cafe. They ordered coffee, and Max taught them a few English idioms he'd picked up from local friends. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, he said with a laugh. It means, try to adapt to local customs. The conversation shifted as each person shared what they missed about home and what they enjoyed about life in London. Lucas listened, realizing that learning English wasn't just about grammar and vocabulary. It was about forming connections, sharing experiences, and understanding people. He saw that every person brought a unique perspective to the table, and he felt inspired by how his classmates expressed themselves despite their language challenges. When they parted ways, Aya asked Lucas if he'd like to meet up for more outings in the future. We can explore different parts of London together, practice English, and maybe even make some British friends, she suggested. Lucas felt a surge of excitement at the idea. Yes, I'd like that very much, he replied, smiling. He realized that with each new connection, his confidence grew, and he felt a little less like a stranger in a foreign city. Walking home, Lucas thought about the day's lessons. He'd learned more than new vocabulary. He gained a new perspective on the importance of friendship and community. Chapter 5. Breaking Barriers with Small Talk. Lucas's confidence had grown since meeting new friends at the gallery. He could feel himself becoming more comfortable in London, though he was still nervous about talking with native English speakers. The next challenge, he decided, was to overcome his hesitancy to speak with locals. The opportunity presented itself sooner than he expected. That Saturday, Aya invited him to a small community event in a local park. It's an international festival, she explained. There will be people from all over the world, lots of food and music. It's a great place to practice English with locals and other international students. As they arrived, Lucas felt a wave of excitement and anxiety. Colorful stalls lined the park, offering everything from traditional British pies to spicy Indian curries. He spotted groups of people chatting, laughing, and enjoying the food and music. While they wandered through the stalls, Aya encouraged him to try out simple greetings with the vendors. At a booth selling fish and chips, Lucas took a deep breath and approached the man behind the counter. Hello. I'd like to try fish and chips, please, he said, carefully pronouncing each word. The vendor, an older man with a friendly smile, nodded. Sure thing, mate. It's a classic. Have you ever tried it before? Lucas hesitated, then replied, No, it's my first time. I'm from Spain, and it's my first time in England too. The vendor chuckled. Well, you're in for a treat. Welcome to London. He handed over the food, and Lucas managed a smile. He felt a rush of accomplishment from this small exchange. As he and Aya sat on a bench eating, a local woman sitting nearby noticed his hesitancy. She introduced herself as Claire and with a warm smile, asked, So, are you both new to London? Lucas nodded. Yes, we're both learning English here. It's challenging but exciting. Claire laughed and nodded in understanding. I can imagine. It's always a bit tough at first, but honestly, you both speak very well. London has people from everywhere, so you're definitely not alone. They continued chatting, with Claire asking about their countries, why they came to London, and what they liked most about the city so far. At first, Lucas's responses were brief, but he slowly grew more comfortable, noticing that Claire seemed genuinely interested and patient. Eventually, she shared stories about her own experiences traveling and learning bits of different languages. "It's not easy, but you pick things up quickly if you're open to it," she said, giving Lucas and Aya an encouraging nod. By the end of the conversation, Lucas felt a shift in himself. The brief, everyday exchanges, the small talk, were becoming less intimidating. They were, in fact, windows into people's lives, allowing him to connect even more with the city. As he and Aya walked back home, she beamed with pride. "You did it, Lucas. You spoke to a Londoner, and it went well." Lucas grinned, feeling a newfound ease with his English. "Yes, I think I understand now. It's not just about speaking correctly, it's about finding small ways to connect." For the first time, he felt that learning English was more than just words. It was an adventure in connecting with the world around him.